Welcome to our regular meeting for the City of Lacombe Council. It's Monday, March 11th. It's now 5:30 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order. With respect to agendas, any items that you'd like to see removed from the consent agenda? Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Motion to accept the consent agenda as
Just wait for those results to come up. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move we accept the agenda as presented.
Thank you. One final opportunity. And that is passed unanimously as well. Thanks, everyone. We've got a relatively light agenda this evening as far as a number of different things. But let's start out with presentations. We've got Mr. Jared Reich here from ECHO, who's the current president. We appreciate you coming to visit us. Please make yourself at home. And whenever you're ready to present your annual report, the floor will be yours.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. All right, yeah, so this is the 2023 annual report to council from the ECHO Lacombe Association. Let's get started here. I'll just leave that on the whole time. Okay, so we'll go over our 2023 highlights, successes. We have kept ongoing sponsorship support for some events and facilities, front and back ice at the ice complex, Santa Claus Parade, Passport to Christmas, and again, the Chamber Awards. We got some new sponsorships, or we've had some new sponsorships last year. We did the Smash Bros esports event, Big Brothers and Big Sisters Game On, as well as some the Pride Society Rainbow Underground and the Lacombe District and Historical Society Food Security Program. We also have a couple of cool community grants, the new disc golf course, which I'm personally super excited about, as well as the Broomtree Transitional Housing Pilot. I will feel free to interrupt me at any time for questions or at the end, whichever you prefer. I think we have one more page of successes here. Yeah. All right. So we've had a very interesting year. We had record growth for ECHO Energy utility customers. Touch on that later. We've also had some pretty cool improvements for the food rescue. So I'll go over those. Yeah, so it was our first full year with the new coordinator kind of running the show, allowing the board to operate from a bit of a background stance, and that went swimmingly. We've got a partnership with FCSS for and other general stuff taken care of, some general maintenance stuff. Outside of food rescue, we continued the execution of the radio advertising subsidization program. We had some volunteers for the food rescue all line up nice with their fancy branded aprons. and there's a check being given for the Broomtree Foundation. So that's really nice pictures. All right, so on the right, we had just a picture of the storefront enhancement for Millie Oak. Those gooseneck lights there, I think there's 5 of them, but the picture shows 3. And then on the left is the umbrellas we just mentioned that have been popping up around town, downtown. All right, sometimes the click doesn't work. There it goes. I'm not even going to mention that left picture there. I don't know what that is. And on the right, I believe that's the Big Brothers Big Sisters game on check that we've presented to them. All right, so we have 1,236 electricity accounts. I'm not sure if that's end of 2023 or as of right now, but it's basically nearly doubled. So we had at the last year's presentation, we were at the 740 something, and you can see between 2022 and 2023, it took a massive jump. So we're very excited about that. It's like it's hard to say how unbelievable that really is. We have a few theories as to why that would be. Food rescue being very high on that list. So yeah, that's basically going to enable us to just keep chugging along with what we're doing at a even faster and more expensive pace, basically, or not expensive, but delivering higher dollar amounts to projects and community things going on in the community. So yeah, that's that. You can just see this different chart really reveals the annual increase we had there. So yeah, it just jumped dramatically. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a pretty good discussion point. So how do I make that connection, you're asking?
Yes.
So we've tried a few methods of, spreading the word, and nothing has really stuck between anything measurable. The only difference in the last, year and a half to 2 years was word of mouth from food rescue. So we've heard tons of stories about people having conversations with volunteers, having conversations with people spreading the word about Echo, who basically has, kickstarted and operated everything with the food rescue. So that's why I say that would be at the very top of our list for explaining the massive growth. There obviously would be potential other side effects, like maybe market rates made Echo Energy slightly more favorable or evenly favorable. So it was easier for people to make a switch from perhaps some deal that they had somewhere else. It's impossible to measure those things. So yeah, that's I would say like the most drastic difference is just the huge community involvement in food rescue. It would just have to be causing a decent attribution to that.
And I'm not wanting to argue that, and that's wonderful success. I happen to think that is not the factor. I think it is the market driven. The end result is still positive, and that's the same. Naturally, we don't have any stats for that, but I think that the energy costs are a substantially more likely factor than what the food rescue is, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and that's all it is my opinion.
And that's valid, and that's valid for sure. I think it's probably a great combination of the two that just worked out great for us. Yeah.
Director Lapointe.
If I may, I think Echo has actually experienced some greater awareness because of the food rescue as well. One of the things that the group has struggled with is promoting the utility. And the food rescue now has, I think, 5,000 followers. And so that when they talk about what makes the food rescue happen, Echo Energy comes at the top of the list at that point. So again, I think the correlation is more about increasing the awareness of what Echo Energy does at that point.
Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Here's a cool little stat for how many pounds of food waste have been diverted from the landfill, which is, again, it's just an astronomical number. So cool. We're so proud of them. It's excellent. All right, so we got strategic objectives for 2024. This is some quick bullet points again as well. Same core areas that we're covering that we showed last year. So promote economic growth. Again, promote the downtown storefront enhancement program. That just continuously is a smooth sailing ship every year. So we're going to keep going with that. Financial support of new downtown events. Anything that comes up will be, right at the top to be helping out with that. Stimulate business resiliency. Working on implementing the Lacombe Bucks program in partnership with Chamber of Commerce. This is kind of like something that kind of a path that we've tried to tread in the past with, promoting some sort of financial benefit to buying local and doing stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it looks pretty promising. So it sounds great to me. Hopefully it goes well. And also review business walks initiative with Chamber and City. And I believe there's a couple more. Advance Lacombe's economic diversity. So like you mentioned there, any way that we can increase word of mouth is just gonna help our initiative just do better and do more for the community. So we're gonna try and focus a little, maybe not more, but just keep a good awareness of our social media presence, whether it's the food rescue or just Echo Lacombe stuff itself. Supporting unique community projects and programs through our grants and sponsorships and everything. Let's keep doing that as we have been. And maintain Lacombe's high quality of life and standard. Again, cross-promoting food rescue and Echo Energy, those two just have a very smooth transition and conversation, and they just go well together. So we'll keep working on that, and look for opportunities to assist social agencies and expand network of food rescue suppliers. So that essentially means where we can collect the food from. The more the better. We don't want to have all of our eggs in one basket and all of a sudden one of our suppliers disappears and then the food rescue grinds to a halt. So the more we can kind of diversify there, the better. And there's a nice quote to finish. Be the change you wish to see in the world. I believe that's the very last slide. Yeah. That's it. That's all the high level quick points. Feel free to ask any questions.
Appreciate your presentation. Thank you for that. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Thanks, Jared, for your long time commitment to all of this. That's really appreciated. I just had a question about the Lacombe and District Historical Society Food Security Program. I'm not sure I'm aware of it.
I believe that was a typo. My apologies. It should have been, it's the Lacombe Composite High School is what it should have been. So it should be LCHS, not LDHS.
And so explain that a little bit further, if you don't mind.
So yeah, are you?
Go ahead, Pete. It's going to be better worded from you.
We were approached by the high school. They had done a survey of their student body, and they discovered that, not surprisingly, there was a number of students that were coming to school that were hungry. My apologies. And so they were looking to start a small initiative at the school, and applied for some funding to provide breakfast, I believe it was, for students, because they did not have a program in place yet at that point.
Yeah, I will say that that's not the first time we've had involvement with schools. So it's nice to have that connection as well. Yeah, thanks. I knew that too, and I should have known.
Looks like that's all the questions we have for you tonight. We want to thank you for coming and appreciate the great work that you do for our community. Well, thank you. I believe that's the only item that we have up for request for decision. As put forward by, or as presented by Coordinator Bellabono, is 6.1, which is bylaw 370.4, the council procedural bylaw amendment proposed for first and second reading this evening. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. This evening, administration is proposing the amended bylaw 370.4 for first and second reading. At the October 23rd, 2023 council meeting, council directed administration to return the proposed procedural bylaw 370 amendments after the December 4th council workshop for council discussion and input. As bylaw 370 is commonly reviewed at the beginning of each new council term, with the most recently amendments made in November of 2021. Administration has since been tracking some changes and is presenting the changes in this bylaw this evening through bylaw 370.4. Administration conducted research to evaluate council procedural bylaw 370, specifically regarding the incorporation of parliamentary procedures. Municipal Affairs provided guidance and streamlining on streamlining the bylaw, emphasizing clarity and excluding unnecessary elements. In municipal affairs, procedural bylaw and agenda guide, they highlighted the optional nature and potential complexity of these procedures. Initially, administration was considering integrating Robert's Rules of Order as a secondary authority, and it was suggested by municipal affairs to simplify and customize terms to suit council's needs. The Municipal Government Act provides minimal guidance on procedural bylaws and does not mention council agendas. While creating a procedural bylaw isn't legally mandatory, it's considered a best practice. References to resources like Robert's Rules of Order may be incorporated for matters not covered by the bylaw or the MGA, but adherence isn't legally obligatory. The bylaw should enhance meeting productivity by focusing on relevant agenda items. Council's flexibility to amend the bylaw and suspend rules for specific purposes is emphasized. The goal is for each municipal council to create a tailored rule book, reducing reliance on complex parliamentary procedures. Administration is advocating for clear and straightforward bylaws, cautioning against treating parliamentary procedures as a secondary authority. We encourage council to shape regulations to suit the municipality's specific needs, exercising their freedom in this process. In the RFD presented to you today, there are a number of categories as listed, and those are not limited to those areas, but those are the areas of amendments made. In the definitions, there are 3 new definitions to align or assist with clarifications in other sections of the bylaw. Meetings and proceedings amendments are reflecting clerical errors. Rules of Order includes changes to align with the new voting system and mic software that council is currently using. The process to amend, withdraw, or modify has been revised to assist with clarifying any interpretation and notes the importance of stating the question. Conduct has been revised to allow the chair to fully participate as a member and make motions. The agendas, revisions, addressing consent and regular agenda items, item changes, the voting requirements for each, clerical corrections, and deletions have been made. The meeting etiquette includes changes to align, again, with the voting system and software that council is currently using. Regular, special, organizational, and council committee meetings. Administration left the option open for council to suggest the time change of the meeting. Clarification on the length of absence has been added to allow for both council and the commissions, boards, and committees members, along with public member appointments and council appointments to them to be ratified. The order of business council reports have been changed to be submitted quarterly, along with a few clerical corrections. Rights and debates. The chair, it will allow all members to allow all members to speak once prior to speaking in debate in order to maintain impartiality and prevent influencing the debate. It also includes changes to align with the new voting system software. In the motion section, this section shows as being completely replaced in the draft bylaw 370 consolidation of 370.4. The whole section has not been updated and replaced. The sections that actually have changes are in red font. As there are various areas of changes, administration can go through these items more thoroughly after first reading has been passed. In the voting section, unanimous consent has been added as defined earlier in the bylaw in definitions, and the changes to attending a meeting electronically when it comes to voting. The minutes will now include all active participants' names in the minutes. Upon the passing of bylaw 370.4, administration will provide a quick reference guideline aimed at providing added assistance to counselors in implementing the bylaw. These guidelines will be used in future council orientation training and revised to reflect any modifications to bylaw 370. Administration is looking for first and second reading this evening if council has any questions.
Thank you for that summary. Appreciate it. Councilor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the motion that council gives first reading to the procedural bylaw amendment bylaw 370.4 as presented.
Speak on procedural matters or anything related to them. Councilor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I want to thank Coordinator Balbono for this. It was nice, all of us participating in that session as well. And I think that opened our eyes to a lot of things, and I see a lot of them in here, and I think that'll help us going forward. So thank you for that.
In case anyone is wondering, Councilor Connick is not here in person. However, he is participating electronically. And therefore can cause the odd delay. That is unanimously in favor. For the first reading. Councilor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I move that we pass bylaw 370.4 for second reading, please.
Thank you. Councilor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just have a few questions for clarification primarily. So with regards to adding, so this would be section 6.4 agendas, item 3. Says only business listed in the agenda shall be undertaken at a meeting unless a resolution to change it by majority vote. Now, am I to understand that that means that if we have an agenda that's been published and we come to the meeting and we decide that somebody needs to add an item, does that mean that to add that single item or additional items to the agenda, that would require a separate motion to do just that? And then you would go ahead, depending on what the result is, on actually making a motion to adopt the agenda.
That was certainly my understanding as well. However, there was no clarification made on an informational type item to be added, or one that would require some sort of a decision moving forward. So not so sure that we don't need to incorporate that as well. CEO Gowdy.
So currently it doesn't differentiate between an informational item being added to the agenda or a decision item. And either one would require a vote specifically for that thing. And so if you wanted the agenda's passed and then you wanted to add something about color of trucks, and someone else said, actually, I also want to talk about something else. What kind of line paint we use? There would be a one vote to add the truck discussion, one vote to add the line painting. And if there's a third item that was just information, I'd like to hear about what color our trucks currently are. That would also require a separate vote.
And just for a small clarification, you said that when the agenda was already passed, that would be a unanimous vote in that case, but prior to the adoption being agenda being adopted, then it would just be a simple majority vote. Do I have that correct? So once an agenda has been accepted already, we've adopted the agenda at the beginning of a meeting. If somebody at a later time during the meeting wants to wants to introduce a new item, we can, but that requires a unanimous vote, I believe. But prior to the agenda being adopted, it just requires a majority vote on that single item or items to add to the agenda. Is that correct?
Coordinator Belbono?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yes, I believe that's Councillor Collins. Yes, in section 6.44, it does say that it would require unanimously supported. So that would be a unanimous. Carried
Okay, good.
unanimous.
I like that answer. Then on 6.4, number 7 reads, despite section 6.46, a councillor may make an exception request on any item from the consent agenda and placed on the agenda. Such a request must be made before voting occurs. So it uses the terminology request there. And just for my clarification, so that would just be asking the chair to remove that from the consent agenda and place it on the agenda, or does that actually require a formal motion to make that move?
CEO Gowdy?
What you're describing is covered in section 2.014. There's been a new definition of an exemption request, and so that's what you would be making, and it does not require a vote. It's simply, I want to exempt this, and any counselor making that request is suitable to remove it and put it on the normal agenda.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. And then finally, in regards to reordering an agenda, and I'm sorry, it wasn't really clear on. So there are times when we move around items in the agenda despite how it's published, and I just would seek clarification as to what the approach of the bylaw is in regards to that, if that's permitted or if that's requires something special to happen to reorder an agenda after it's already been adopted and we're now in progress.
The situation you've described there is discussed on page 4 of the RFD, that during meetings, members may request agenda changes, especially if the meeting moves faster than anticipated. So to reorder something, for example, because we're not yet at a time for a public hearing and we don't want dead space, that under this new bylaw, even a reordering like that would be considered a change of the agenda after it has been adopted and would therefore require either unanimous consent or unanimous vote.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. And one more, if you'll indulge me. I know I just geek out on this stuff. I apologize, but you know this. So the last item is the quarterly reports, and I believe that's covered in 6.8. So I guess I would just like a little bit more rationale as to why that recommendation is being made. My concern is that sometimes I rely on those reports to hear about meetings that we don't get minutes for example. So without the connection of the attending member of council, I don't know what's going on in that committee. And there are a number of those committees and boards that we don't get minutes from. So by having reports done quarterly, that information is really outdated by the time I get it and also by the time that the public as a whole gets it. And I just feel like if it's important enough for us to have placed a member of council on that committee or board or whatever, either I want to be seeing a report or minutes somehow more often, or I would encourage us to keep an expectation that we're reporting back to council and the public more often than quarterly. Thank you.
Anyone else? There was a couple of items. The first one under rules of order 6.2 1-4, the first person to raise a hand and attract the attention of the chair. In speaking, I need to incorporate our current system on that one. Or am I looking at the old version here? While you're looking at that particular number, I did want to go through another item that I think there would be value in, and that is to have a vote to have multiple readings of any given bylaw during one council meeting session. I think it would be a relatively minor adjustment. And there are occasions when the ones that come to mind are when we choose to do perhaps a second and third reading in an evening. It can be an item that is of interest to our community, naturally. Hard to believe that all of them aren't, but ones that are of particular interest. It makes for a very awkward situation when any one of us can put forward a motion for a third reading, knowing full well that it may pass, when there's really no particular advantage to that. And the disadvantage is it looks like we're just pushing stuff through a meeting and don't want more public input. Naturally, everyone's going to vote for it. Or in an instance where everyone's going to vote for it, they don't want to vote against it, even though all they're voting against is the third reading portion of it, not the motion itself. Babbling on a bit here, but does that make sense? I would just like a formal way to acknowledge that we are doing a multiple reading of anyone, just as we do for 3 now, but just have it for multiple, even if it's just 2. I think it would be a very transparent thing to do and not too onerous on administration or us to put through that small change. CA Gowdy?
Okay, you had 2 questions there.
Yep.
One, I believe you are looking at the consolidated version of the current bylaw.
Thank you.
The amended one reads, the first person in the voting system queue will be acknowledged by the chair and thereafter has the floor. And it goes on to speak about the voting queue system. To your other comment, if I correctly understand it, I just want to make sure we all do. You're saying similar to right now, when we do 3 votes in one meeting, you have to have unanimous consent or unanimous support to pass that third reading in one meeting. You are proposing an additional step of unanimous consent or unanimous endorsement for 2 votes to have 2 readings to happen at any given meeting. Is that accurate?
That is correct. And I'm not even sold on whether it needs to be unanimous or just a simple majority, to be right honest with you. I think it's outlined in the MJ that we do that for a full 3 readings in one evening, which is understandable. I just think it would be good business practice to do them for 2 as well. So make it just for more than 1 reading, which is basically saying the same thing. It's just another level of transparency that I think is in our best interest, and can't really say that I see the downside of doing that. Councillor Hoekstra, was your comment on the current topic or another one? Okay. So I think everybody's clear on the intent of that one. CA Gowdy?
For third reading, we'll include an option that continues that same 3 reading provision into a 2 reading provision. And if council supports, we'll include that in the final reading. And if not, then not.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I would like to go back to the councillor reports. I too support what Councillor Hibbs is saying, that they should be more frequent. I would suggest at least once a month, but I was curious what the what's going to be the strategy to ensure that councillors do submit reports. I guess that would be my question, because we've been doing reports the whole time I've been on council, but there's been no ways to ensure that people do submit them. Not meaning to be a school marm here, but I too value those reports in the same way that Councillor Hibbs has expressed.
So any lights coming on that one, so another one was under structure, which is 3.0, and I'm looking at 3.05. Mayor shall be addressed as mayor, then last name in parentheses. Councilors of the city other than the chief elected official shall be designated the title councilor. I'm just wondering why the differentiation. Why isn't it councilor last name as well? In meetings, that's an expectation. It seems odd to me. Why would they would read differently?
Don't know. We'll align them for the third.
Thank you. We haven't heard much from Councillor Clonic. Did you have any input at this time, Councillor Clonic?
No, I'm good. No, it sounds all, just as far as the reports go, I know I'm pretty bad. I'll fully admit I should be submitting mine every month, and I don't. So I will do better. Thank you.
It's kind of you to fall on the sword. I think that I have myself to blame too, because I'm probably one of the worst offenders because I appreciate the reasoning for wanting to have them. I think in reality, I do not find as much use of them as some members do. However, the rationale for wanting them is sound, and not unlike Councillor Conic, I will endeavor to do better. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Could that be on the reports? Could it be changed that that's a minimum, not a requirement to be quarterly? So you would have to do one once a quarter or quarterly, but you can do it more often, obviously.
Certainly we could do that. However, from what I'm hearing from the individuals that were very much in favor of them, it would kind of remove the benefit if they're only done quarterly, is what I heard. Is that a fair summary? Councillor Hoekstra? Councillor Hibbs? Okay. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just maybe one request, like with our committee responsibilities, when the meeting minutes are submitted by our, for example, I'm rec board. Maybe not everybody knows that. So perhaps behind the meeting minutes that are submitted in brackets, Councillor Ross, because then you have submitted some of the obligation and responsibilities of the committee that I represent. Because then the public knows that that is your area, even though I guess if they read the meeting minutes, it would show it, but it would also show right in the agenda that you're fulfilling your obligation of part of your reports of the meeting minutes.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I appreciate that. However, if you happen to be assigned to boards or committees that don't do minutes, then it would look like potentially that you never actually go to anything. So I think just opening the minutes themselves will show whether you were in attendance or not in attendance. Report will show in fact that you were in attendance, and you can claim all of the duties and responsibilities that you've taken on.
Missing one of my notes, but that's okay. Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I'm just asking a question. I'm curious about the time of the meeting, whether I don't have a personal opinion about it. It always was 5 o'clock. Now it's 5:30. Is there a will to change that? That hasn't been addressed.
Certainly willing to hear others' input on that myself. I would prefer it was earlier. I think that was made in consideration of individuals who perhaps worked out of town. Whether or not that is still valid or necessary is certainly up for debate. I do think that we need to appreciate that it takes an awful lot of staff to properly run our meetings at a standard to which we've been accustomed. And the overtime or the adjustment of work-related time is substantial. So I think if we're able to accommodate it earlier, I think it would be in our best interest. However, I'm only one voice, so what's everybody's thoughts on adjusting the time? Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. For the same reason that I supported moving it to 5:30, I would say that if you're wanting to attract a diverse background of people to council, I think that having that extra flexibility of being able to drive back in from maybe they work at a town or needing to be able to hand off childcare or et cetera, et cetera.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. As it stands right now, I do support the 5:30 time. It does work for me, and I am grateful for the scheduling ability of administration and staff. If there is a will to change it, I of course will make it work. So it works for me as it is at 5:30, but I of course will work to accommodate whatever we choose.
Councillor Koenig.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I'm in favor of the 5:30. I'd like to leave it there as well. Not to mention the fact, I think the consent agenda greatly speeds up our meetings now. I mean, once upon a time, I would have said 5 because of the agendas are so long, but and now in light of the consent agenda, I think 5:30, just for commitments, I think is still great. Thank you.
Anyone else? We have went through quite a number of items here. Is there anyone that we have glossed over, have not discussed to anyone's satisfaction? Coordinator Bellbono?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just wanted to bring attention to the handout that I just gave. What that is just a working consolidated procedural bylaw. What it has is it allows you to look at one document to have the additions, the changes, the revisions, so you're not flipping back and forth. So it's just a working document. That's not what's going to be published.
Thank you for that. Not seeing a bunch more input for it. So before us, we have bylaw 370.4, council procedural bylaw amendment for second reading as put forward by Councillor Hoekstra. Thank you. Not seeing any more input. So please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously in favor. Guess I would ask administration what the expectation is for bringing this before council for the third and final reading, time frame wise.
There's some very significant changes that we're contemplating, just the third reading.
Thank you. I would also suggest that if any councillor has any other items that they discover afterwards, it would be in our best interest to put them forward. I think in theory, they should probably come to my office first, and I'll give them to the CAO. Probably be in our best interest to incorporate them into the proposal, of which will have to be voted on like the rest. However, I think time-wise, that would be in our best interest if they are of a consideration at a time prior to our next meeting. Certainly get them in. I would hate to put everybody's late night reading to waste and not have them brought forward for discussion or consideration rather. That brings us to item 7. Notices of motion. Councillor Hoekstra, give you an opportunity to read your notice of motion, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just to maybe even implement this procedural bylaw that we were just discussing, if I don't read it into the record, then we are not, because you brought some information to me tonight that you were suggesting that it's maybe out of order that I present this to as a notice of motion. So I'm wondering whether I should pause and not read it into the record.
That choice is certainly yours, Councillor Hoekstra. But for the rest of the council, what I was referring to is I just as we all know that this is certainly the proper way for councillors to bring forward questions to council and administration. However, in this instance, I'm not totally sold that this isn't bypassing a procedure that we have in place already, given that this is a recreational related item. I was just curious as to why this did not go to our rec board and come up that way as opposed to coming directly to council. This seems more like an operational thing to me, and that was simply my question. And I guess I would put that to CAO Gowdy.
Well, the simplest answer would be that when we receive a notice of motion from council, we put it on the agenda. More complicated, though, is that Councillor Hoekstra actually did ask me ahead of time for advice to say, well, what should I be doing if I want this to happen? And I said, well, it's not currently in our plan. So normally if council, desires a change in things, they do a notice of motion. So I don't want to sort of throw her under the bus here, but so after doing so, yeah, I had also come to the conclusion of, well, actually what's being requested here could probably be handled through the existing Community Builder Partnership Fund. It is a new service and you have an existing process there that does vet these kind of things. And so I do think that would be a standard consideration process. Now, council is an extraordinary body. And so if you wanted to go through a non-standard consideration of it, I think you certainly can as council. But I also think the Community Builder Fund probably is a good avenue that you look to. So I would leave it to you. If you don't read it in, then we wouldn't put it on the next thing. But I do want to acknowledge I had given some level of this advice to this is a possible avenue for you. So I'm sorry for that.
No, and I mean, don't misconstrue my comments to suggest that I'm either for or against it. It's just in this particular case, I mean, notice of motions are important, and I'm just not so sure that we don't already have an existing process to address items like this. And until that's been pursued, I'm just not totally sold that it ought to be coming directly to council this way. That was just my only question. And that is not my decision as chair or anything else. That was just my thoughts on it. And because you brought it up, I wanted to clarify that. CAO Gowdy? No problem. Councillor Hoekstra?
I have nothing more to say.
Okay, very good then. A bit of an unusual situation, however, even though it was printed in our agenda, if the notice of motion is not read into the agenda, then it stays where it's at for the time being. And that's not meant as being negative to that sport or those individuals who choose to pursue it. However, I think we have other possible methodology for them to pursue. Thank you. And then we do have several, I guess it's 4 in-camera items. I don't believe there's any other regular business, so I'll just go through the next meetings. They are all regular meetings here at council chambers, still at 5:30. And they are on Monday, March 25th, Monday, April 8th, and Monday, April 22nd. So anybody watching can put those in dates in their calendar. And I believe that takes us to Section 8 in-camera items. It's currently 6:23. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the motion. We move in camera.
Thank you. If there's not a lot of other comment, please vote. And that is unanimously approved as well. We're now in camera.